So what we're going to do now is give you all a chance to ask a question. So you can say, Steve, that vision is nonsense. Or you can ask a question, why do you think that vision is there? We're going to ask all our speakers to come back up and give you the opportunity to ask some questions. And Steve Roberts, my colleague from the Solution Centre, is going to facilitate the discussion for us.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So
Gareth,
your chance to ask some questions. And we also have the pleasure of inviting Gareth Davis to join our panel from Eigen, a company I'm familiar with from my days at BP. Everyone else take their seats, please. Nikki, there was Nikki. Yeah. So we are streaming our session this afternoon live, so please use the microphone when you ask a question. Lauren will give you the microphone. Please state your name and the organisation you represent, and then address your question to either an individual member of the panel or the whole panel. That would be great. So with that said, I think first question, please. No question? Here we go. There's a question at the front.
Hi, Dan Millard, eServe. One of our biggest challenges that we've had since we did a co-funded project with Asset Integrity Solutions Centre, and one of the biggest challenges we've had is trying to get change in operators and the changes of the way they work with how we work. Now, in some cases, we've kind of offended them in meetings because it's like telling them to change, you know, like they're doing it wrong and it could be done better. And it's trying to convince a guy who's been in the industry 30 years to go back to being a graduate again, almost. So, you know, how do you, you know, advise making that change and, you know...
Phil, do you want to go with that one?
Yeah,
How like being a graduate?
It's a long time since I was a graduate. Yeah, I've had a lifetime of what I call your baby's ugly selling technique. You can't tell anybody that their baby's ugly. It's back to the leadership. Is that the leadership have got to be demanding of, you know, the people that if you've been doing maintenance like this for years, we need something different. You've got to embrace it. So, but that is the problem. I think you talk to the senior execs and they say, I want to see something different. I want change. I want to look for it. But we've had an industry that's gone through a downturn. People got busy day jobs. You know, who's got time to look at that new stuff? But it's just got to be leadership. You know, we're preachers of the converted here. I'm sorry, I've been chewing Steve's ear on this. That, you know, where are our customers? Where are our customers that are hungry for this stuff? And I think we've got to push OGTC and others much harder to say if they want to change, then there is technology out there. A lot of it is in SMEs. It isn't in their main, or exclusively in their tier one contractors. But they've got to embrace it and they've got to be brave enough to use it. But it comes back to leadership. So I've probably got in trouble as well now.
So that's you know, you go to the top, and then how do you get them to then drive that seriously down the... Because we've done that, and then you're seen as pushing that guy aside and going above him, which then makes him look bad. Because it's like, you know, so we just seem to be feeling like we have constant barriers with just not the technology's ready. The technology's been proven by one or two operators that have implemented it, but then we've got other operators that just... we can't even get past the first stage because they're just not interested in, they're interested in making it fit rather than making it better.
I mean, I think, sorry, yeah, Gareth.
It's very interesting you bring that up. It's a point that, you know, we've experienced similar types of issues where, and we said it here, we looked at all the new technologies that we could use in oil and gas, and we listed a set of technologies that are already proven, already out there, and used in many other industries, and we're not using them. So, as an industry, why is that the case? And I think, you know, one of the things we said was the technology's roadmap, we're going to do 3 to 4 years out because we can't see any further because technology keeps changing. But if you're building a brand new asset, if you're not already designed it, it's not going to be 3 or 4 years away. It's a little bit further. So our timescales are different in the construction of the asset as well as the operation of that asset. So I think that's one thing we should look at. Then the other part is some of the biases in the decision making within the oil companies themselves. So within the operations group, there's if you go down to the coal face, there's a reluctance to change because A, they're very, very busy, B, they're in a risky situation where they've got far too much to do and it's already difficult for them. You've got a management, top leadership who says, yes, we absolutely have to transform. And then you have biases and decision-making in the middle management, which drives out opportunity for change in favour of cost saving. And that whole configuration is one, as an industry, we're going to have to address.
Yeah. So
Graham, any observations from other industries?
Yeah, so similar sorts of things within the nuclear industry. How we attack the problem is you get the engagement from the end users. You get them to be the champions of the system, because if they see the benefit. But it's echoing what you said in terms of a lot of the people that are the end users are busy firefighting, and they don't necessarily have the strategic, forward look in terms of there might be a bit of pain in terms of adopting the new technique or the new way of doing things, and they can't necessarily see past that to the bigger picture. That's where you need the case study and the evidence, and maybe evidencing other situations where where it's been successfully deployed, or you run it alongside an existing system. So that's how we've done it with we're a university coming into industry, trying to say, look, adopt our stuff. If you think it's a difficult sell there, then it's maybe even more with an academic involved. But yeah, it's engagement in the end users. It's getting them excited about using it, showing them the benefits. And
well, it was quite interesting for us because we had a phone call one day from an operator that was I think they just came across us on the internet, phoned us up and says, we're really desperate, we need someone to go offshore on Thursday. It was a Tuesday. We actually went in to speak to them to try and demonstrate to them, look, we're going to do things slightly differently to how you've normally done them. And the guy was pretty much, hey, I don't care, just can you do the job? Can you get a guy off on Thursday? And it was like, yeah. But then we did the job, and then they saw the efficiency change, and the turnaround time was just, it was significantly better, and we ended up winning long-term work off them. But it was frustrating for us that, we tried to go into every other operator, and they're just not even interested in listening, which is sometimes even getting them to pick up the phone or even get a meeting set up, or they say to you, can you send me over some slides? And it's like, well, our slides don't really properly explain, the actual, because it's quite flat, as you talked about, and you're kind of without giving them a proper demonstration on a demo, which we're not willing to share over an email because of our own company intelligence. So, it's trying to get them doors cracked open as well, because they're firefighting every day, and I get that, but it's. I think it's. One operator that we got in with, they actually had a development manager. So that development manager was a job to kind of interact with people like us, and that helped us get that door open, which was a great benefit. But other operators, we haven't really seen that. So.
Yeah. So I think just to add to that, so one of the reasons the OGTC is set up is to help with that. A, to get the first project and prototype done, so you've got a bit of a use case. Doesn't get you in the door, but we recognized that yesterday. So as you saw, that the actual operational challenge and that culture has to change. The leadership is one aspect of it. It's being able to share results and let people know what's out there, because even if they wanted to change, they might even not have known you existed. So that's an aspect of it. And we will do that through sharing what the use case is, what's going on, what comes out of our projects. But there isn't a silver bullet. It's a journey, so everyone's on it. And sounds like you've had one result, and I suspect that's what's going to happen. We want to get this train moving piece by piece, and it will be management, it will be sharing results with the MER UK task forces, it will be showing use cases, and yeah, it's going to be a struggle. But it is also finding, that's why we invite you, and when we say you are all part of that journey, because if you're sitting in that operator or you're sitting in that company, you have the potential to be that champion that just makes it happen, and that spark makes it happen. But I don't think we can give you the one thing that's going to solve your issue.
I think Maggie wants to say something.
Yeah, no. Just to add to that, there's no silver bullet, but it's also you're not alone, because it's a very common feedback. So if that helps, I'm sure it doesn't. But a lot of SMEs say absolutely the same. It's it's quite classic, difficult to get in. But as Steve said, that's what the OGT was set up to do. We're also, the feedback we've done with established companies has said there's a real need around sales and business development. I'm sure this isn't you, but a lot of companies who do have technology can be great about the technology, but they forget to tell the person what the benefits are, and there can be quite a lot around that to just think about being in another person's shoes. But also what we are looking to do is having more of a marketplace type scenario, and with the Opportunity North East work we're doing, so trying to get some of the operators together with SMEs and others to at least build some of the relationships and take away some of that fear, because there are fear for risks and lots of good reason, I'm sure, but part of it is about the demonstrating the success and also getting the relationships working as well. So I think, as Steve said, there's no one easy answer, but I think everyone's aware that there's things to be done there, without a doubt. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if there's another question in the room. Yep, the back there, thank you.
Hello, it's Gavin Stevenson, Janus Insight. It's a follow-on to this, and I just wonder if it's a lack of an apex decision maker. A little bit of experience from the nuclear decommissioning market, Sellafield, and also from in the US from a major shipbuilder who only had one client, which was the US Navy, who basically drove, you will improve your efficiency or else. So over the last 20 years, they've developed a extremely smart project planning tool that sits next to Primavera. And it's an incredible tool. It's everything you're talking about here today. And they've been doing it for the last 20 years. But why was it driven towards that? Because they were told, or else. You will lose it. You'll lose the contract.
So, I mean, I think, there was quite a lot of discussion yesterday about the role of the OGA, as you can imagine. Also around, standard business cases around some of this stuff. So we certainly discussed the challenge. I mean, the other aspect is that it may take someone or an operator to fundamentally just decide to do things differently. So we work in a culture that even, as I said before, we're making incremental changes, and even some of the technologies we work on may only drive an incremental change. So what is going to drive a step change? It may take someone just to decide to do things, and the challenge though for the supply chain is likely isn't with some of them. It might be completely different. Who is that company going to be, and who's going to do it? That's an open question, but I think it is something that we need to think about as an industry. And it is, though, we're seeing shoots. I mean, we have lots of discussions. We had a supply chain event that I've already talked about, track and trace and planning. Obviously, as you caught on, it was a key aspect. A couple of the companies that we're talking to, operators that we're talking, want to get together and think about how they actually change the way they do these things, right? So that's important. And if you look outside of industry, which we did in the supply chain event, you look at how the retail, so the supermarkets, have changed the way people supply their material. So if you're a small vendor, we would only put 20% of a truck that's delivering to a supermarket. They just told them you can't do that. We only want full trucks turning up. So then they had to get together with their competition and cooperate around their supply chain. So they changed. So that's if you like, the operator changing the way the supply chain works. I suspect we're going to see some of that. And it was one of the discussions yesterday.
Okay, there's a question at the back, please.
Keith Gregg from Ping. Intellectual property, you've talked about the supply chain and innovation, these companies working together. Has that been raised as an issue, or is there any solutions around that concept?
Yeah, so from an OGTC perspective, yes, IP is a great consideration, and if you're a small company coming along for funding and you want to work with people, you obviously want to be clear that you can protect your IP. So any projects that we get involved in, the person or the company that brings the IP retains the IP. There is no discussion. Especially, we have a different number of projects. We have a directed project where it's an operator and an SME. That's a bit of an obvious relationship, and the IP is protected. When we have a shared challenge, where we're talking about getting companies together, then there has to be an agreement up front about how IP, if it's going to be developed as part of that work, going to be shared or otherwise. So yes, it's taken into account, and it is a critical discussion, obviously.
Any other panel members want to talk about IP protection, or? No? Okay. This morning there was a comment expressed a fear of this change could lose people's jobs. So I'd like to ask the panel, what's your opinion about reskilling? How will jobs evolve with the impact of this new technology?
Okay, I'll do reskilling. So one of the things we have found from the work that we've done is there's definitely going to be a need for some reskilling, upskilling within the sort of general industry and workforce. A lot needed with young people. The skills they're coming out with from schools, the need to get graduate apprentices, a real lack of concern around a number going into computer science at university graduate level, etc. So there's a big issue around the skills piece, and also I suppose so it's not about displacing people. It's just maybe it's some different skill sets that'll be needed for the future as well. But that is quite a big topic and a big challenge for everybody, without a doubt.
Phil?
I'm a real optimist about human beings, actually. We talk about Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. If you go back to the first industrial revolution, everybody was worried that once you mechanized farming, nobody would have a job because everybody worked on farms. We are fantastic at reinventing ourselves and reinventing bits of business. I think with any revolution, there's that transition bit, which I think reskilling you've got to be careful about. But I just think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and the days of the robots taking over and HAL are still some time away.
Great, thank you. Another question from the room?
Yeah, one question about the greenfield, brownfield distinction, right? So where lies the business case for the ACS? Of course, it's technologically easier to develop a new smart facility than retrofit an existing one. But there are not many new facilities to be developed in the North Sea. There are many instead which are brownfield. And so, there's a business case element, and there are different challenges, I guess. So is that worth considering different roadmaps, separate roadmaps? How are we addressing the brownfield challenge?
Well, I'd first ask how brown is your field, because the idea that you can we're in a digital transformation right now. But transformation is a gradual process of discovery, of finding new ways to work. We don't actually know what the final answer is going to be. We're going to have to evolve our way to that answer. With the types of field developments that we do in our industry, with very large capital expenditures and very careful design, it's almost impossible to design a facility that you're going to operate maybe 5 or 10 years hence with what will be current technology then when we don't know what it is now. So I think the greenfield one is a bit of a red herring, if you can have green, red and brown in the same sentence. But so I think everything's going to be brown. We're going to be retrofitting all the way through. So the question is, do you retrofit, how do you retrofit new ways of working into a facility which is 25 years past its design life, versus how do you retrofit into a facility that's just been commissioned? I think you're always going to be retrofitting into existing platforms until we get to the point that the technologies have stabilized and the ways of working have stabilized. Will always be in that retrofit scenario.
Graham, any comment about retrofitting ancient power stations?
Yeah, so, well, I guess nuclear, you've got Hinkley Point C, a brand new station being built. I think there's a lot of lessons learned to be taken from running existing plant, and I think there is an opportunity there to learn from that. So, if we knew what we know now, when if we could go back in time and and retrofit that onto the old plants, how would we design our condition monitoring systems? How would things like access is a huge problem within the nuclear industry, getting access into the core and those sorts of issues. So I think there is so I totally agree that in terms of the the technologies may have moved on, but fundamentally it's still understanding or still gathering data. It might be gathering it in a different way, but we're still making the same decisions. The decisions haven't changed. The decisions that we're making are, you've got an asset and the asset degrades and you need to know its health at all points. You need to know when to either intervene, make changes, or when to replace it. So I don't think those sort of concepts have changed. And we have more data, the ability to gather more data, but the interpretation of that data, we were still doing that 50, 60 years ago, taking a paper trace and analysing that. The human brain was still analysing it, still same understanding of the processes that are going on there. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot you can learn from your brownfield sites in terms of informing the the new designs. I think your question was, are they different? Yeah, they're going to have different aspects of it. Benefits of running brownfield sites is you have got historical data, you've got actual field data. A brand new site, you don't have any of that. You've got start of life data, but you don't have the later degradation data. So yeah, maybe there are different approaches, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
I think Phil's got a comment.
Yeah, I think there are some lessons for us, because we bemoan about the facilities that are beyond their design life in the North Sea, and then we did some work with Network Rail, reminded that most of their assets were designed by the Victorians. So it's about a mindset. It's about taking a digital mindset to an old facility. You haven't got all the best sensors in the world, you haven't got all the best process control in the world, but there's still a lot of virgin territory for being able to bring digital technology to improve efficiency.
So I think from Retrofit, there was a question this morning about decommissioning. So a question for Nikki. Could smart facilities help with our decommissioning burden?
Well, one of the things, particularly on small pools, is because we're looking at the circular economy, we're designing for reuse. So we're actually building in that from the beginning. The intention is that we'll take it up, we'll reuse it for the next facility, and then at the end of it we'll remove everything, clear seabed. So it's actually the greenfield part of it gives us that opportunity to do that. But I was just thinking, if I go back to the last bit about greenfield versus brownfield. Now, some of the kit that we're going to be looking at is going to be designed for 20 years. So although we're going to move it on, it's probably still brownfield equipment because it's going to be reused. So that would be like the pipelines and the manifolds. It's the big bits of metal. But some of the other parts of it, like the controls, it tends to be that the controls become obsolete after 5-10 years. So because we're designing it for reuse, it means that we can go in, we can change them. It gives us that opportunity to replace the parts of the kit that are going to be they can be easily replaced, and they're moving on. So it's sort of a bit of a combination of the two with small pools. It gives us that opportunity to change out.
Great, thank you. Another question? One here.
Good afternoon, James Johnston from Enkelt. Picking up on the comments from the last few speakers, it's very much about having smart systems that can pull both together. The analogy I always use is, if people go in and move into an old house and you watch them on Grand Designs, they like the fireplace, they like the staircase, they like the Aga in the kitchen, they like the French sink, and you build systems around that pull data, legacy data that's important to us, and we pull it all together and we work with it the best way we can. And whether that input comes from direct inputs from sensor data, monitoring existing data collection systems, or you end up having your guys digitally enabled to go and do that. It's the cumulative collection of data and the good working of data, as Phil has eloquently put this afternoon, that allows people to make the decisions. You can't not go down this route. It's a direction of travel that we all have to get in there. We've all got our different different speeds at which we'll be able to do it, our different destinations towards the ultimate, machine learning and artificial intelligence. But we need to get going now.
Any question for the panel after that?
Just any comments on that?
I think you've absolutely nailed it. Some of the Industry 4.0 research out there is what we call, cyber physical systems. This idea of a digital augmentation to a physical asset and human systems, and it's about understanding where you're going to put the next part of your digital journey, because you're going to do it step by step, moment by moment, business case by business case, and finding a standard way to make those decisions and know what your options are is going to be really important.
Great. Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, hi there. My name's Alan Grundle. I'm from a self-employed with a company called Argosson. I was going to talk to Nikki, and that was, we say things have to be reusable, which certainly would agree with. One of the things that I've been looking at in the past is refurbishing subsea Christmas trees. But the problem there is that OEMs don't really want to pass on any information. Certainly don't want to give you any spares. And I was just wondering if you knew how you get around that.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do with the two initiatives is actually take the operators along with us. So we have, for Tieback of the Future, we have a working group to try and push some of these challenges through. That if we could get them to buy into it, then it makes our life a lot easier. So yeah, I mean, the thing with Christmas trees is, yeah, we have reused them in the past, but it is very limited, and it depends on the company because some won't touch them. But it is about trying to take it's not just the operators, but some of the other industry along with us on and buy into the whole idea of it before we go down that route and actually build these reusable systems. Does that answer your question?
So I think it was about open access to Christmas tree systems. I'm going to ask the panel about open access to data. What role do you think that plays in the change going forward?
So do you want me to perhaps say, perhaps you start and then I'll finish.
I just wanted to sort of make a comment on, in terms of collaboration, it's what's the bigger goal here? Is it the UK continental shelf? And if you don't all club together and push in that same direction, then what happens if it fails? Everybody fails. So I don't know if you're in that position, but it's what's the bigger picture here? You can be have your own domain and protect that, but if you're also cutting off, if you're a supplier and you're cutting off your customer from that, then you're on route to nothing. So I think it's that sort of bigger piece. We spoke about leadership in the other session, and it's it's who does that and who drives that forward.
Okay,
Yeah.
Steve.
So it comes back to the discussion a bit about what's going to change the industry. So it may be, in your case, it needs a couple of the operators to say, no, we need modular Christmas trees that are understood, and that the mechanics and the critical core components are well understood by everyone, so that anyone has the opportunity to be part of the game, and they would really drive it, which comes back to that discussion. Because if we don't, we probably as an industry will not be able to take advantage of the things that we've been discussing, especially around the small pools, where most of the opportunity for realising revenue in ME and the UK continental shelf exists. And part of the MER the requirement from the OGA is that operators have to collaborate. It's part of the behaviours that is encapsulated in the MER directives. So there is that requirement essentially to work together, and that's a key bit that people forget. The good things, there is some green shoots. I think we've seen that people actually are more open. But we're beginning to get these consortiums, if that's the right word, together to think about some of these challenges. But it may take that, we have to do things differently and just take the lead and change things. And I suspect, and when we come back to that discussion around how we're actually going to do a step change, it requires someone to start saying, no, we're going to do it this way. And if you're not interested, then you're not going to be part of it. But that's quite a tough discussion. There's anti-competition and all sorts of things get raised by that. But it is quite an important thing. And it comes back to the same thing around data, so open data. So we've some challenges with Facebook and, so we're trying to foster an idea of opening up data. So if you open up data so that you share operational data among operators, then you can apply machine learning on, and so the algorithms can learn on a much bigger data set for the benefit of everyone. But people are very reticent about opening up their data. And it's about understanding that thinking. And so one of the aspects we are looking at that, well, okay, what's in it for me? So it applies to the organization as well as an individual. So there is great opportunities. You see the OGA is now looking at the National Data Repository 3.0. I'm sure it'll go to 4.0 to catch up with everyone else soon. But that's generally focused around using data that's focused on subsurface data, but could move into any other aspects and operational data. And we're certainly interested in, as part of some of the discussions around how we can use operational data more effectively to train algorithms better. So that's another discussion, which is exactly, it's not the same, but it's the similar sort of working together, even though you're competitors sort of scenario that we really need to see in our industry. And it is, again, it needs leadership and challenge.
I think Phil's got a comment on data.
Well, I think more generally in our industry, it is interesting that I think one thing characterizes upstream oil and gas and maybe even downstream oil and gas, they're not really competitive businesses. You know, if BP improve their operational efficiency by 10%, they don't put Shell out of business. If Toyota improved their operational efficiency by 10%, it's a serious problem for General Motors. And yet, in more competitive industries, they share data more. They collaborate more with their supply chain. And they've got real IP that they've got to protect there, but they're more open than our own industry here. And I'm sorry, it comes back to the L word again, that we've got to, as much of thinking digitally, we've got to think about, there's no competition in upstream oil and gas. A little bit in subsurface data, even then you could argue that with a 25-year license, then it's yours for 25 years. So there is a whole mentality that, we've got to protect this because we're better than anybody else. You're not in a competitive business. You're not competing in that space. You can learn from each other.
Great. Any other questions from the room? Yep, there's a question over here. Just wait for the mic. Then we'll have time for one more question, so be thinking.
Hi, Adam Jones from Costain. Just thinking about a couple of the points that the chap over here raised earlier around both reskilling and struggling to get a foot in the door, I think. Does some of that come down to the expertise within the operator? And do you think the operators need to be recruiting different, expertise with some of the digital skills that we've seen here? And have they been doing that, I guess, is kind of the question.
Yes and no.
Yes.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yes and no. There's certainly some of the people in our industry are not as familiar with some of the more millennial technology, shall we say? It's not a comfortable, normal way of interacting in their daily work. Or daily lives, in fact. So there is, there's definitely part of that. But I think the issue is that we're bringing solutions to a problem that people don't know they have, and that's why they're not interested. If they knew they had a problem, maybe they'd be looking for a solution, and maybe they'd be willing to engage a bit more. Those people I found when I've talked to people who know they have a problem are very interested looking for solutions for it. But where the problems I come is when I come with a solution. And people look at you blankly because they don't yet know they have a problem, which comes back to the sharing of data and the sharing of performance amongst other companies. If you knew that you were 50% less efficient than the guy sitting next to you, maybe you would think that's a problem.
Yeah, okay. one last question here.
So when you were Stu Gallagher from Exodus Group, just to follow up on your point there, when you talk about an issue that is not already known, a lot of operators know they've got issues in terms of maintenance backlogs. So if we were to take the approach of going and trying to resolve maintenance backlogs, for example, you've got your the emergency shutdown valves, you take the PI data from there, the limit switch fails from PI, and then that goes back into, say, the maximum management system, then that means the onshore reps don't even have to see that because the work order has already then been created. So should that be no more the approach then, in terms of trying to resolve the problems that they already know about?
Well, I think I'll address that in two ways. One is knowing the outcome of the problem. I have a maintenance backlog is not necessarily the same as knowing what the problem is. So I know my efficiency is 73%, next door is 86, but I don't really know why, but I know I've got a problem, but I don't know what it is. So that's one, what is the problem? Then the other one is one about transparency and visibility. I'm a great believer in making information available to people. Even if it's not within your domain, make it transparent and make it available unless there's a really good reason not to, because all kinds of things will come out of that you didn't expect, because there's somebody who will use that information for the benefit of your company without you prescribing them to do it if they just get access to it. And so I think making exactly what you said there, I've made a closed loop decision without making it transparent or visible. Onshore didn't know about it. Well, why not? Why are you not showing all that information and making it available to anybody who would want it?
Yeah, it's not to say that because they can still have access because the work order number and all that would still be there. It's just, it would steam it up rather than them offshore having to come back to onshore. I'd like to go and fix this limit switch to then for them to then get approval to then come back the way. So
that's maybe not an information problem. That's maybe an approvals workflow problem.
No,
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add on to that, so that's looking at a process that could be improved, definitely. So it's an outcome in most of our operations. So it turns about improving performance of managing an asset. That is a key part of it. And it will be changed both on the supply side in terms of, changing the way we do maintenance, but then when it's necessary, we can automate that process to something. It doesn't mean it's not exposed or transparent. It will just happen. I think which is a little different from the challenge that we have when we've got a solution or a technology that we believe will transform the industry, and getting that into that, which is the discussion we have earlier. And it actually came up in the morning discussion, people go, I've got an opportunity. I want to know as an operator what your problems are so I can then solve it, because it makes it really easy to sell, right? But they tend to be a little bit reluctant to share that. And while on the operator side, they know they've got problems, but they want to find out what is out there that can help them solve it. So it's one of that sort of getting rid of that operational barriers and one of our roles is to disseminate information of who has a capability in what area. So if you are in that space when you're looking for the technology that might fit your problem, that helps. But it also sharing problems and coming together in forums like this to identify the key areas, then the industry starts knowing, okay, I'm working in the right space to solve some of the industry's challenge, which is a shared challenge. You didn't really have to own up that it was something that was specific to your asset. But you'd like to think
that be
people...
information transparency by any
Yes, and then of course, you'd like to think as we grow more comfortable with this, that people are much more transparent around the challenges they have. But, they are reticent, obviously.
So we're out of time, so thank you for your questions, and I'd like you to thank our panel for their answers.